It was a day like any other, filled with the humdrum of suburban life, when I stumbled upon a moment that would change everything. The sun was shining brightly, casting golden rays over the neatly trimmed lawns and the white picket fences of my neighborhood. I was simply watering my plants, a routine task that brought me little joy, when I accidentally caught a glimpse through the window of my 60-year-old neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, standing naked in her shower. It was a mistake, a horrifying, shocking mistake that sent my mind reeling. In that instant, the confines of my marriage felt like a prison. I had been married to Sarah for 10 years, and the thrill we once had seemed to have evaporated into thin air. The spark that once ignited our love had been replaced with a dull routine, and in the back of my mind, I often wondered if I was missing out on something more. As I stood there, frozen in shock, my heart raced. Mrs. Thompson, with her silver hair cascading down her shoulders, was unaware of my gaze. The water glistened on her skin, and in that moment, she exuded a rawness and freedom I had longed for in my own life. I quickly turned away, my pulse pounding in my ears. What was I doing? This was my neighbor, a woman old enough to be my mother, and yet I felt an inexplicable pull toward her. Thank you for subscribing to my channel, everyone. Your support means the world to me. If you haven't yet, make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Let's dive into this journey together. I had said in my previous video, not knowing that this day would lead me into an unexpected tale of longing and self-discovery. As I walked back inside, my mind raced with thoughts. How could I have let my curiosity lead me to such an embarrassing moment? I was supposed to be a devoted husband, and yet here I was, grappling with feelings I didn't fully understand. The moment replayed in my mind, taunting me, and I couldn't shake the image from my thoughts. That night, as I lay in bed beside Sarah, the weight of the day pressed heavily on my chest. She was fast asleep, a peaceful expression on her face. I turned to look at her, the woman I had promised to love for better or worse. But the truth was, our marriage had turned stale. Conversations felt forced, and intimacy had dwindled to a mere memory. I felt trapped between two worlds, the life I had chosen and the unexpected allure of something new. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. I avoided Mrs. Thompson, but I couldn't escape the thoughts of her. I found myself watching her from a distance, noticing how she tended to her garden with the same care I used to have for my own. I wanted to approach her, to talk, but guilt stopped me in my tracks. Who was I to seek comfort in another woman when I had a wife at home? Days turned into weeks, and the guilt gnawed at me like a persistent itch. I would often reminisce about the early days with Sarah, the laughter we shared, and the dreams we built together. But those memories felt distant, overshadowed by the reality of our lives. I began to wonder if I had let life pass me by, if I had taken the love we shared for granted. One afternoon, as I stood in my backyard, I caught sight of Mrs. Thompson through her kitchen window. She was baking cookies, the aroma wafting through the air and teasing my senses. I hesitated, torn between the urge to say hello and the fear of crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But as fate would have it, she looked up and smiled, her eyes twinkling with warmth. "Hello, Jake," she called out, her voice cheerful and inviting. Caught off guard, I waved back, my heart racing. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson," I managed to reply, unsure of what to say next. She beckoned me over, and before I knew it, I found myself walking towards her house. The moment felt surreal, like I was stepping into a world I had never dared to enter. "Want to help me taste test these?" she said, holding up a tray of freshly baked cookies. I chuckled nervously, sure, I'd love to. As I stepped into her home, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. The air was warm and sweet, filled with the scent of chocolate and sugar. We chatted about the neighborhood, our lives, and slowly, a friendship began to blossom. But as we laughed and shared stories, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking a tightrope, teetering between right and wrong. I had made a mistake that day, one that would lead me down an unexpected path. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent encounter would unravel the threads of my marriage and force me to confront my deepest fears. And so, the stage was set for a journey fueled by curiosity, temptation, and the search for fulfillment. Would I find the courage to face the truth about my life and the choices I had made? Or would I succumb to the allure of a new beginning, even if it meant risking everything I had? As I pondered these questions, I couldn't help but feel that the window I had accidentally looked through was more than just a glimpse into another's life. It was a reflection of my own struggles, desires, and the infidelity that loomed on the horizon. The days turned into weeks, and my newfound friendship with Mrs. Thompson blossomed. What had begun as an accidental glimpse into her life turned into regular afternoon visits filled with laughter and cookies. Each time I stepped into her cozy kitchen, I felt a sense of warmth and acceptance that I had been missing in my own home. The contrast between my interactions with her and the silence that lingered between Sarah and me was stark. As I sat across from Mrs. Thompson one afternoon, her lively stories about her youth and her adventures filled the air. I found myself captivated by her spirit. Yes, she was older, but she carried a vibrancy that seemed to defy time. I realized how much I craved companionship and understanding, qualities that had faded in my marriage. "Jake, you're a good man," she said, her emerald green eyes searching mine. "You deserve to be happy." Her words struck a chord deep within me. I was a good man, but happiness felt elusive. I had sacrificed so much for a love that had lost its spark. The guilt of my friendship with Mrs. Thompson began to gnaw at me, yet I couldn't bring myself to distance myself from her. Each visit felt like a balm to my weary soul, even if it came with a side of guilt. Flashbacks of my early days with Sarah invaded my thoughts. I remembered the first time I'd seen her, the way she lit up a room with her laughter. We had shared dreams of a future, of a family, and of endless adventures. But somewhere along the way, life had slipped into a monotonous routine. Our conversations had become mechanical, and intimacy had turned into a mere obligation. I often wondered if I had taken her for granted as our lives intertwined. That evening, as I returned home, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, lost in a book. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated her face, casting a warm light over her features. For a moment, I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering the times when we would curl up together, sharing stories and dreams. But now, there was a distance between us that felt insurmountable. "Hey, how was your day?" Sarah asked, glancing up. "It was good," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Just watered the plants and helped Mrs. Thompson with some baking." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You spent a lot of time with her lately." "It's just baking, Sarah. She's lonely, and I figured I'd lend a hand." I explained, the guilt creeping back in. "Right," she said, her tone laced with skepticism. "Just be careful, okay?" Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tension. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. Why was she so quick to judge? Why did it feel like she was putting up walls between us? I wanted to scream, to express the turmoil swirling inside me, but I held back, fearing it would only escalate our already fragile dynamic. The next day, I found myself at Mrs. Thompson's again, drawn by a magnetic pull I couldn't resist. We sat in her garden, surrounded by blooming flowers, the sun casting a golden hue over everything. As we talked, she shared stories of her youth, adventures that made me laugh and reflect on my own life choices. "Jake, sometimes life takes us in unexpected directions," she said, her voice gentle. "It's never too late to find what truly makes you happy." Her words resonated with me, igniting a flicker of hope. I wanted to believe that change was possible, that I could reclaim the joy I had lost. But the thought of Sarah lingered in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of my commitments and the life I had built. "Do you ever think about what would be like to start over?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thompson paused, her expression thoughtful. "I think about it more than I care to admit. Life can change in an instant, and sometimes we have to make choices that lead us toward our true selves." I looked at her, a mix of admiration and longing churning within me. Here was a woman who had experienced life, who had lived through heartaches and triumphs, yet she remained resilient. I wondered if I could gather the courage to reflect on my own heart and take the necessary steps to find my happiness. As our friendship deepened, I found solace in her presence. But with each moment spent together, my internal conflict grew. I was drawn to Mrs. Thompson, yet the guilt of my betrayal weighed heavily on my conscience. I knew I had to confront Sarah to address the growing rift in our marriage, but the thought terrified me. One evening, as I lay in bed beside Sarah, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the conversation I had with Mrs. Thompson. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting shadows in the room. I turned to Sarah, who was fast asleep, and I felt a pang of sadness mixed with longing. I wanted to reach out to her, to bridge the gap that had formed between us, but the words eluded me. The next day, I decided to take a different route. I would confront Sarah about our relationship, about the distance that had grown between us. I knew it was time to face the truth, to lay bare the feelings that had been festering beneath the surface. As I prepared to talk to her, my heart raced. Would she understand? Would she be receptive? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. It was time to stop avoiding the inevitable. "Sarah, can we talk?" I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She looked up from her book, her expression curious but wary. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "About us," I began, my heart pounding. "I feel like we've lost something important, something that used to connect us." Her brows furrowed slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't talk like we used to. We don't share like we used to. It feels like we're just going through the motions," I continued, searching for the right words. "I want to understand what's happening between us." Sarah's expression softened, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "I thought it was just me. I felt that distance too, Jake. I didn't know how to bring it up." In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. We had both recognized the cracks in our foundation, and perhaps, together, we could start to mend what had been broken. As we delved into a heartfelt conversation, I realized that the road ahead would be challenging. But perhaps it was a necessary step toward healing. I could no longer ignore the feelings that had emerged since my accidental glimpse through the window. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to navigate this complex web of emotions without losing everything I had built. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of relief mingled with uncertainty. I had opened the door to a conversation that could lead us back to each other, but the journey would not be easy. I would have to confront my own desires, the choices that lay ahead, and the uncharted territory of my heart. The allure of the forbidden still lingered, whispering promises of excitement and adventure. But I was beginning to understand that true happiness might not lie in the arms of someone else, but rather in the willingness to face the truth about myself and my marriage. The days following my heartfelt conversation with Sarah felt different. There was a tentative hope in the air, a fragile connection that seemed to weave its way back into our lives. We began to communicate more openly, discussing our feelings and dreams, and it felt as though we were rediscovering each other in a way that had long been overlooked. Yet, despite the progress, the pull I felt toward Mrs. Thompson remained an undeniable force, lurking in the shadows of my mind. The warmth I experienced in my conversations with Sarah was comforting, but there was a thrill I had never anticipated in my friendship with Mrs. Thompson. Every time I visited her, it was as if I was stepping into a world where the mundane faded away, replaced by laughter and shared stories. I found myself drawn to her resilience, her zest for life, and her ability to see the beauty in the simplest of things. One sunny afternoon, I decided to invite Mrs. Thompson for a walk in the nearby park. It was a chance to escape the confines of our homes and enjoy the fresh air. As we strolled through the blooming cherry blossom trees, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. The petals danced in the breeze, and for a moment, I forgot about my internal struggles. "Jake, you have a wonderful spirit," she said, looking up at me with a genuine smile. "You remind me of my younger self, full of dreams and possibilities." Her words ignited something within me, a flicker of ambition that had been extinguished over the years. I wanted to be that man again, the one who chased his dreams without hesitation. But as I looked at her, I also felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. How could I pursue happiness without hurting those I cared about? Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. I appreciate that. I replied, my heart racing. You have a way of making me feel alive again. We continued our walk, sharing stories about our lives. She spoke of her late husband, the love they shared, and how she had learned to find joy in the little things after his passing. Her vulnerability touched me deeply, reminding me of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. As we reached a small pond, we sat on a bench, watching the ducks glide across the water. You know, Jake, she began, her voice soft, life is too short to play it safe. Sometimes we have to take risks to find true happiness. Her words resonated with me, echoing the thoughts that had been swirling in my mind. I felt a stirring of desire, not just for her, but for the life I longed to reclaim. Yet, I was still tethered to my marriage, grappling with the fear of what pursuing that desire might mean. Can I ask you something? I ventured, my voice trembling slightly. Do you ever regret the choices you've made? Mrs. Thompson looked thoughtful. Regret is a heavy burden to carry. I've made my share of mistakes, but I believe every choice shapes us. It's what we do with those experiences that matters. In that moment, I felt a rush of clarity. I didn't want to live with regret, to look back on my life and wonder what if. Yet, the path ahead remained murky, and I found myself at a crossroads. Could I continue to explore this connection with Mrs. Thompson while still working to mend my marriage with Sarah? That night, as I returned home, I found Sarah in the kitchen, preparing dinner. The aroma of spices filled the air, and I felt a sense of comfort in the familiar routine. But as I watched her, I couldn't shake the lingering thoughts of my afternoon with Mrs. Thompson. Hey, how was your day? Sarah asked, glancing over her shoulder. It was good, I replied, trying to sound casual. I met up with Mrs. Thompson for a walk in the park. Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of concern crossing her face. Oh, I see. You really have been spending a lot of time with her lately. There was again the unspoken tension. It's just friendship, Sarah. I promise, I said, attempting to reassure her. We talk about life, about finding happiness. Sarah nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. Just be careful, okay? I don't want you to lose sight of what we have. Her words stung, and I felt a surge of frustration. Did she not see the effort I was making to reconnect? I wanted to scream that I was trying to be a better husband, yet the allure of my friendship with Mrs. Thompson continued to tug at my heart. In the following days, I found myself caught in a web of conflicting emotions. I cherished the bond one was forging with Mrs. Thompson, yet I felt a weight of guilt for allowing it to deepen. The connection with Sarah had rekindled, but it was still fragile, and I feared that my involvement with Mrs. Thompson could jeopardize everything. One evening, Sarah suggested we go out for dinner, a chance for us to reconnect outside the confines of her home. I was eager to embrace the opportunity, hoping it would help us solidify the progress we had made. We chose a cozy Italian restaurant, the soft glow of candlelight creating an intimate atmosphere. As we sat across from each other, the conversation flowed more easily than it had in months. We laughed over shared memories and reminisced about the adventures we had once dreamed of pursuing. For a brief moment, the distance that had grown between us felt like a distant memory. But as I sipped my wine, my thoughts drifted to Mrs. Thompson. I imagined her laughter, her warmth, and the way she made me feel seen and valued. I fought to push those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the woman sitting across from me, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish. I'm really glad we're doing this, Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. I've missed us. I have too, I replied, my heart swelling with a mix of hope and uncertainty. I want to make this work, Sarah. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Despite our attempts to reconnect, I felt like I was navigating through a fog, unsure of which path to take. After dinner, as we walked hand in hand along the street, I felt a flicker of warmth, but it was tempered by the shadows of my desires. I wanted so desperately to commit to Sarah fully, to reignite the passion we had once shared. Yet, the allure of the forbidden remained tantalizingly close, whispering promises of excitement and newfound joy. That night, as I lay in bed beside Sarah, my heart was heavy with conflicting emotions. I turned to her, watching her sleep peacefully, and I felt a wave of love for her wash over me. But there was also a nagging sense of dissatisfaction, a yearning for something more. I knew I had to confront my feelings, to untangle the complex web of desire, guilt, and love. The allure of my friendship with Mrs. Thompson had opened a door to emotions I had long suppressed, and I could no longer ignore the reality of my situation. In the days that followed, I resolved to find clarity. I needed to face my feelings head-on and make a choice about the direction of my life. I couldn't continue to dance between two worlds, nor could I live in a state of uncertainty. But as I prepared to take that step, I realized that the journey ahead would not be easy. The path to self-discovery would require confronting my fears, my desires, and the truth about what I truly wanted. The days turned into a blur as I wrestled with my emotions, hovering between my commitment to Sarah and the intoxicating connection I felt with Mrs. Thompson. Every interaction with my neighbor seemed to deepen my internal struggle, pulling me further into a web woven with threads of guilt, desire, and longing. I decided I needed to confront the reality of my marriage. The conversations Sarah and I had shared over dinner were a start, but I knew we were still tiptoeing around the truth. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were just putting a bandage on a wound that required deeper healing. One evening, after a long day at work, I found Sarah sitting at the dining table, flipping through an old photo album. The soft light from the lamp illuminated her face, and I felt a pang of nostalgia as I watched her smile at memories captured in time. I wanted to reach out to rekindle the warmth we once shared, but I could sense that the distance between us had grown even larger. "Hey, Jake," she said, her voice brightening as she noticed me. "Look at this. Remember our trip to the beach?" I forced a smile, leaning over to look at the photo of us laughing together in the sun. "Yeah, I remember. We had so much fun," I replied, but the joy felt hollow in my chest. "Do you think we'll ever go back?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Of course we can," I said, but I could feel the weight of my unspoken feelings pressing down. How could I promise her that when I was struggling to find my own happiness? "Jake," she said, breaking the silence, "I know things have been tough lately. I've felt it too, but I want to work on this. I want us to be happy again." Her sincerity pierced through the fog in my mind, and I realized that this was my moment. I had to be honest with her, to lay bare the truth of my heart. "Sarah, there's something I need to talk to you about," I began, my voice trembling with the weight of my confession. "Okay, what is it?" she asked, her expression shifting to concern. "I've been spending a lot of time with Mrs. Thompson," I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess myself. "And I've been struggling with my feelings. I didn't intend for it to happen, but it has." A silence fell between us, heavy and suffocating. I watched as her face paled, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "You're saying you have feelings for her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, not like that," I rushed to explain. "It's complicated. She's been a friend, someone who listens to me. But I want you to know that you're my wife, and I love you. I don't want to lose that." Tears welled in her eyes, and I felt a wave of guilt crash over me. "But you've been confiding in her instead of me. You've been seeking comfort in someone else," she said, her voice shaking. "Why didn't you come to me?" I was scared. I admitted, my heart pounding. I didn't know how to express what I was feeling. I thought I could handle it on my own, but it only made things worse. "Jake, this is serious," she said, her voice rising. "You need to figure out what you want. I deserve to know where we stand." In that moment, the truth hit me like a tidal wave. I had been avoiding the reality of our marriage, hoping that things would magically improve. But all I had done was create a chasm between us. It was time to confront my own shortcomings and take responsibility for my actions. "I know I've messed up, Sarah. I never meant to hurt you. I want to work on us, but I also need to figure out what I want. I can't keep living in this confusion," I said, my voice steady. "I want to be honest with you about everything." Her expression softened, but the hurt remained evident. "I need time to process this," she said, wiping away her tears. I just, I don't know how to move forward from here. I nodded, understanding the weight of my confession. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, ready to talk whenever you are. As the evening wore on, the tension in the room lingered, and I felt a mix of relief and dread. I had finally said what needed to be said, but the road ahead felt uncertain. I could see the cracks in our marriage, and I knew it would take time and effort to mend what had been broken. In the following days, I felt a sense of heaviness in my heart. I was committed to working on my marriage, but the allure of Mrs. Thompson still lingered in the back of my mind. I found myself questioning whether I was truly ready to let go of that connection and focus solely on rebuilding my relationship with Sarah. One afternoon, as I sat in my office, I received a text from Mrs. Thompson. "Hey Jake, I baked some cookies and thought you might like to come over for a chat. Let me know if you're free." I hesitated, my heart racing. I wanted to see her, to feel that warmth and comfort again, but I also knew I needed to set boundaries. I couldn't allow myself to slip back into the patterns that had caused so much turmoil in my life. With a deep breath, I replied, "Thanks for the invite, but I need to take a step back for a while. Things have been complicated for me lately, and I need to focus on my marriage." I felt a pang of regret as I hit send. The thought of disappointing her was difficult, but I knew it was necessary. I had to confront my feelings and the choices I had made. I couldn't keep running away from the reality of my life. That evening, Sarah and I sat down to talk again. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a sense of determination in the air. We discussed our feelings, our hopes, and the changes we needed to make. "I want to rebuild our connection," I said, my heart in my throat. "But I realize now that it will take time to heal. We need to be patient with each other." "I agree," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I want that too, Jake. I'm willing to work on this if you are." As we spoke, I felt a glimmer of hope. We were both willing to confront the challenges that lay ahead, and I knew that together, we could begin to rebuild the foundation of our marriage. The journey would be difficult, but I was determined to make it work. Yet in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the thought of Mrs. Thompson. I knew I had made the right decision, but the allure of our connection still tugged at my heart. I couldn't deny that she had awakened something in me, a longing for adventure and passion that I had thought was lost. As I lay in bed that night, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was at a crossroads, and I knew that the choices I made in the coming days would shape the course of my life. As the sun rose on a new day, I felt the weight of my choices bearing down on me like a heavy fog. The nights of restless sleep, the conversations filled with uncertainty, and the tension that hung in the air all pointed to a turning point in my life. I had made a commitment to Sarah to work on our marriage, but the lingering allure of Mrs. Thompson still tugged at my heart, refusing to let go. The days passed slowly, filled with moments of reflection and quiet determination. Sarah and I were making strides in our communication, but each time I saw her smile, I couldn't shake the guilt that came from knowing I had let my heart wander. I was haunted by the thought of what I might be giving up by distancing myself from Mrs. Thompson, a connection that had awakened a side of me long buried beneath the weight of responsibility. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find Sarah preparing dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, and I felt a warmth in my chest as I watched her move around the kitchen. We chatted about our day, and, for a moment, everything felt normal. Yet, beneath the surface, I could sense the unspoken tension lingering between us, like a shadow waiting to be acknowledged. After dinner, as we settled into the couch to watch a movie, I glanced at Sarah. She seemed lost in thought, her mind elsewhere. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, and reassure her that we were in this together, but the fear of what I had done held me back. I could see the cracks in our marriage, and I knew that we were both trying to find our way back to each other, but the path was fraught with obstacles. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself tossing and turning. The allure of Mrs. Thompson danced in my mind, tempting me with the possibility of something new and exciting. I closed my eyes, tried to push the thought away, but it lingered like a ghost, haunting my dreams. The next day, unable to shake my feelings, I decided to reach out to Mrs. Thompson. I needed to confront the emotions that had surfaced since our friendship began. I sent her a text, my hands shaking as I typed. "Hi, Mrs. Thompson. Can we talk? I think I need some clarity about things." To my surprise, she replied almost immediately. "Of course, Jake. I've been thinking about you too. Let's meet at the park." As I made my way to the park, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the path I walked. I could almost hear my heart racing in my chest, a drumbeat of uncertainty echoing in my ears. What was I hoping to achieve by meeting her? Did I want to explore the feelings that had blossomed between us further, or was I seeking closure? When I arrived, I found Mrs. Thompson sitting on a bench, her silver hair glistening in the sunlight. She smiled warmly as I approached, and for a moment, I felt a rush of familiarity and comfort. But I also felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. "Hey, Jake," she said, her voice soft. "I'm glad you reached out." "Thank you for meeting me," I replied, taking a seat beside her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." Mrs. Thompson looked at me with those penetrating green eyes, her expression encouraging me to share my thoughts. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I've been trying to figure out my feelings. I care about you, and our friendship has brought me joy in a time when I've been feeling lost. But I also know I have a commitment to my wife, and I don't want to hurt her." Her gaze softened, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. "Jake, it's natural to have feelings for someone when you're feeling unfulfilled in your marriage. But you need to decide what you truly want. You can't live in two worlds forever." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. I had to confront the reality of my situation. I know I need to make a choice. I've been trying to work things out with Sarah, but I can't ignore the connection we have. Mrs. Thompson took a deep breath, her expression serious. "I don't want to be the cause of any more pain in your life. I care about you, but you need to figure out what's best for you in your marriage." Her words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I felt a wave of clarity wash over me. I couldn't use my feelings for Mrs. Thompson as an escape from the issues I needed to face with Sarah. I had to confront the problems of my marriage head on, and I couldn't let myself be swayed by the allure of something new. "I think it's best if we take a step back for now," I said, my voice firm but tinged with sadness. "I need to focus on my marriage and figure out what I want. I can't keep straddling two worlds." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and disappointment. "I respect your decision, Jake. It takes courage to confront these things. Just remember, you deserve happiness, but it has to come from within." As we parted ways, I felt a sense of relief mixed with sorrow. I had made the right choice, but it didn't come without a cost. I would miss the connection we shared, but I knew it was necessary for my own growth and healing. In the days that followed, I focused on my marriage with Sarah. We continued to have open conversations, exploring our feelings and desires. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of tension and frustration, but slowly we began to reconnect. We started going on small dates, revisiting the things we once loved, and slowly, the laughter returned to our home. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I turned to Sarah and said, "I'm grateful for this time we've spent together. I know we've both been through a lot, but I want to keep working on us." She reached for my hand, and I could see the warmth in her eyes. "I want that too, Jake. I missed you." In that moment, I realized that the journey of healing would take time, but we were willing to put in the effort. I was committed to rebuilding what had been broken, and I felt hopeful for the future. As the days turned into weeks, I found a renewed sense of self. I learned to appreciate the small moments in life, to cherish the love I had with Sarah, and to confront my own desires without letting them dictate my choices. The allure of Mrs. Thompson had pushed me to confront my heart, but it was ultimately my love for Sarah that guided me back home. I had faced the consequences of my choices, and though the road was still rocky, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. I was determined to nurture the love I had for my wife and to create a life filled with honesty, joy, and connection. As I looked out at the horizon, I knew that life would continue to throw challenges my way, but I felt equipped to face them head on. I had learned that happiness was not just about seeking thrills, but about nurturing the relationships that mattered most. And so, I embraced the journey ahead, a journey of love, growth, and the realization that true happiness comes from within. Thank you for joining me on this adventure. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more inspiring and dramatic tales. Your support means everything.